rock and roll.
Thanks.
So welcome to everybody on the phone. Today is one of the webinar Wednesdays presented by the Young Professionals. My name is Leanne Barden, and I am a co-lead for the Young Professionals. We're one of the common interest groups of AOCS, and our goal is helping anybody who has just graduated through the new professional stage, which we cut off at 34, to transition into AOCS. So we try to help connect you with other young professionals who might be facing the same challenges you are, and ease the transition into being a fluid member of the other divisions, because the AOCS is rather large and can be daunting, so our goal is to make that manageable. And then we also try to host these webinars and other activities throughout the year that address the concerns that a young professional is facing. So today we have an excellent lineup of 4 panelists who are gracious enough to volunteer their time. I'm going to go through a quick bio, and then I'll direct questions their way. For our panelists, I have selected one person to answer the question first, but I invite all of you to contribute if you think something was missed in the conversation. And then at the end, we'll cover questions that the audience submits. For our audience, all of you are muted right now, so if you have a question, concern, or a problem, please enter that into the chat window, and we'll read the questions from the chat window at the end. And we are always welcoming more volunteers to the Young Professionals, so if you have any interest or you have ideas for a webinar, please send them our way. We have more information about our group on the AOCS website. We are always looking for volunteers, but we also just need ideas for these webinars. So somebody had actually asked us to organize this webinar, and we put it together. So sometimes an idea is, all it takes to be a great contributing member. So with that, I'll get started. Wanted to introduce our panelists. First, Brent German is an operations professional with over 30 years of management and engineering experience in oilseeds and the related industries. He grew up on a farm in rural Kansas and then worked through all plant supervisory and manager roles for Cargill before refocusing on regional and global technical support roles. He took these skills to Louis-Dreyfus and Egg Processing Inc. for senior site manager positions. He focuses on supervisor and operator training as the key to next level performance with capital projects as a transformative ladder. He participated in and led projects from small improvements to greenfield facilities throughout the world. He currently provides plant project and operation support through Blind Corner Solutions LLC. Our next speaker is Linton Liu. He started his career in the U.S. as a senior chemist in Cargill Central Research. He then joined Conagra as the product development manager and managed new product development for Wesson Oils, Tam cooking sprays, and Peter Pan peanut butters. He was rehired as the application manager by Cargill Specialty Oils, and then took the senior manager position in Herbalife to manage the global project management team. Linton became the executive VP of R&D in IOI Loaders Croklaan in 2016 and the VP of Innovation in Bunge in 2018. He founded his executive R&D consulting company, ERDC, in 2019 and has been consulting for Fasten Oils ever since. Rebecca Rosas graduated from Texas A&M in physical chemistry and began working with Dow's Analytical Services in Freeport. She did a brief stint as a chemistry professor at San Jacinto College and then joined Lonza in 1993 at one of their manufacturing facilities in Pasadena, Texas. She moved to Texmark as a development chemist and then became technical center manager. She rose to vice president / R&D manager in 2009 and became VP of strategic planning in December 2018. And our last panelist is Rick Seiner, who earned a BS in chemical engineering from Christian Brothers University in Memphis and an MS in physical chemistry from Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. He is currently the Technical Applications Manager for Industrial and Institutional Cleaning at Evonik Corporation's Business and Innovation Center in Richmond, Virginia. For the past 15 years, he has been optimizing surfactant interactions in cleaning products and related systems. Prior to that, Rick formulated cleaning products for home and industrial use, developed new product lines, and even worked in market development, although thankfully it was only for a few years, he jokes. So as you can tell, we have a great lineup of speakers with a variety of backgrounds and experiences, and we're really excited to kick this off. So my first question is for Linton. What do the career ladders look like at the companies you've been at? Are there always dual technical management ladders? When does that split usually occur?
Excuse me. So in the company I work with, more or less, they all have dual ladders. And with that said, my observation is on the right side. So it's a dual ladder, pretty much like the one I showed on the screen. And on the right side is you're going up more as a management ladders. On the left side is more technical in depth, all the way become a research fellow. So this is basically two ladders, but my observation is more in the most company is dominated by the right side. The more dominated by the right side, I would like to say. So the company always say they have two ladders. On the left side, actually, they become more and more supplement ladders, which meaning is they will use it as a needed base, and so majorly is dominated by the right side. The ladder is general as a dual ladder, right? So the title may be slightly different from a company to a company, and the split can be at a different level also. And for example, typically you need to be a senior level scientist after that, which means you already build in-depth knowledge. And that's where typically you consider to whether continue your technical advancement or you want to switch to the management. And so it's really depends on how your organization skills mature, and that's where split is going to happen. You can switch from the technical to the management at any level. It all depends on your maturity on the organizational skills. So I'll stop here.
Well, and actually, I'll toss in what Linton just said at the very end is exactly right. Just because you can be at any level, and if you have an interest and you have the ability, oftentimes you can go ahead and make that change over into the management side of things. And it depends on who's around you and who's willing to give you a chance and what positions are open. But absolutely, you can go at any time.
Thank you both. Does anyone else have anything they want to add to that? Okay, great. Next question is for Eric. What are the pros and cons to staying on the technical track?
Well, it's really that you can work with what you love and where your strengths are. As you mentioned, I did take a brief foray outside of, the straight technology. And although I excelled, and I'd say that I did pretty well, I had a couple of moments where I realized I was miserable in my career. It was not what I really wanted to do, even though I had moved that way because the money was better. And what I have learned as I've grown in my career has been I like working in the lab. And although I'm kind of a manager in my role, I still remain much more a technologist than someone who manages people and organizations. As I tell people, I manage projects. I don't manage people. And that allows me to really exercise the technology and learn and use those tools. And that's what I truly love. And that would be the pros. The cons, of course, you won't make as much money. Well, unless you do really, really, really well. And those positions tend to be limited, particularly in this climate of corporatism. It seems like the high-level science and research positions are gradually being phased out, unfortunately.
Eric, if you work in a company where it seems like upward growth requires you to shift into a management track, do you have advice for kind of managing up to your senior managers about how they could grow you on a technical track, or do you think you need to look for a new company at that point?
That's a really good question, and actually you're right. There is a way to go ahead and do that, and oftentimes, even though they tend to phase those positions out, the fact of the matter is that they remain, and those grades remain. And so the way to go about doing that is actually to demonstrate your ability to take on the roles that your boss is doing that focus more on the technology. For example, if you have a new chemistry that you're developing, and there is a significant amount of regulatory work that's going to need to be done, taking that on and demonstrating that you have the ability to take these relatively high-level positions and show that you can work with others, you can do that, and you can continue to move up. But it's risky because a lot of times in the corporate world, you're kind of a lackey to the board, and if they don't like the idea of paying a lot of money to someone who is not willing to manage a lot of people, that can be a problem. And Brent, were you going to jump in on that?
Basically, I'm going to say almost everything you said, probably from a different direction. My career is all in operations, and most of the time I was doing both technical and manager work. But I completely agree with you that if your aspiration is to have a giant salary, that's a management path.
Thank you both so much. Would anybody else like to build on either of those questions?
Well, that's the one thing I think is go to manager letters. I think is but for my experience, what I miss the most is the fun on the technical side, because once you switch to the managerial letters and your focus will be organization, right? So you manager up, manager down, manager left, and manager right. So the time you left is to do the real technical stuff you really enjoy can be limited. So what if you really like the fun with the technical, I think that's where you should consider what you're going to missing there.
Thanks, everybody. So it sounds like, go ahead.
I was just going to say that it depends on how deep into the technical side you want to get into it. If you want to, be strictly at the bench doing development of, say, new molecules or things like that, obviously that's going to be a tough thing to do as well as a manager. One of the things Dow had they had technical liaisons to the production process. They had what they call scientists, and they were they came up the technical ladder, but they were also consultants and worked with the plant to solve problems and come up with ideas and things like that. So it was a unique situation where they were able to use the technical side and then take advantage of those skills and use them in a industrial operations position. So I wouldn't totally exclude that from a possibility, because one of the things when I was tech center director is that I also had R&D and development responsibilities as well as the plant. So I got to have a split between my job with doing development projects as well as making sure the plant got the pounds out the door. So there's always that opportunity exist as well. So don't feel like you have to go one way or the other. There's a way to, if you blend the job well, you can have the best of both worlds.
That's a really great build. Thank you. I think my main takeaway from listening to all of you is, A, it's important to really do some self-reflection on what brings happiness and maybe not just a paycheck. And B, networking with people, especially through AOCS or other events you might be at, is really great, because honestly, Rebecca, I never even considered what you just mentioned as a job. And I don't think if I had attended this webinar, I would have thought of that. So That's kind of my takeaway. And this is a great transition to my next question, and I'm going to start with Brent. What would you say the pros and cons are to staying on a management track? I know we kind of alluded to some of them, but if you want to expand any further.
I think you just made the key point, and it's going to be repeated throughout this. You need to decide what is good for you as an individual, right? So at different times in my life, almost every day in my life, I reach a point where I get tired of dealing with people, and then I'm ready to go sit in a little corner and do something with a spreadsheet or a calculator or anything, right? Just so I don't have to talk to another person. And then there are times when that's not going well, I'm ready to deal with the people issues again. If you go down a management path, the comment is made, I manage projects, not people, but anytime you're managing, you're always dealing with personalities, with how people work with each other, and having to get contractors to deal with vendors, to deal with your employees, right? And the people part of it never goes away. So if you love working with people, it's a great place to go. If you like, seeing people do things and capitalize on their success and building on that, it's awesome. If those things are, you don't like doing that, you don't like being accountable or held accountable or being responsible for results, then management's going to be a very bad way to go. So I don't know if there's a pro or con to either technical or management if that's what you like to do. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Would anybody else like to build on that? All right, so we'll move to our next question, and I'm going to direct this to you, Linton. What does a manager do? So I'm at my senior scientist stage. I'm wondering if I should be a manager, but what am I really going to be doing? Am I leading people, projects, just setting budgets all the time? Can you kind of walk us through that?
So the manager's primary responsibility is leading people, right? So for that perspective, therefore, the manager must pay attention to the people and people's feelings, right? So that's where you spend most of the time, and you manage the people around you. Typically, we have 360 degrees. That's where that came from. You need to manage your supervisor, you need to manage your staff, you need to manage your peers. So this is the core responsibility for the managers. So managers on the project side typically is accountable for the project results, right? So they must ensure project objectives are well defined, and they can deliver the project with the budget and the milestone are met. And they also participate in budget and the strategic development in the R&D department. And I think at the dependent level, your manager level, right? Typically at a manager level, as a team manager, your budget responsibility is relatively small. Typically, just you're executing the project. When the level going up, your manager, the budgetary manager responsibility, and also strategic involvement will increase. So at the director up, they typically involve more and more on the resource allocation and technical strategy. So that's typically how the split is.
Thanks. That was pretty thorough. Does anybody else have something they'd like to build on that?
I think
the thing is, go ahead, Brent.
As a manager, I mean, that whether you're working for yourself or someone else, there's going to be a box, and basically everything inside that box is yours to do with. And good managers really know everything about what's going on in that box, or have control over some way. Poor managers let things go by themselves. Leadership is something else entirely. That's really people oriented and setting the tone, keeping people engaged and getting them going in the right direction. But again, it's as a manager, it's the people there's lots of things you manage as a manager, but keeping track of your people is the biggest part of it, in my opinion.
And Rebecca?
What I was going to say is, if you in the manager's role, you're looking at making sure your people have the right tools, they have the ability to do their jobs, and then in my case, you stand back and let them shine, and then you have to facilitate the business end of it, because you can be a manager inside an R&D facility, or you can be a manager for a laboratory that supports production. Those are two different types of managers, because in an R&D situation, you're managing to the projects and things that those are the products that come through the pipeline. If you're managing a laboratory that's aligned to a manufacturing site, then it's all about keeping the production units running and keeping helping them when they're in the process of taking projects out of the laboratory to scale up and things of that nature. You have products, you have responsibilities, you're making sure your people have all the tools that they can do to do their jobs. And yeah, there's a lot of dealing with people, but most of the time, well, part of it is of like you run interference for them. You make sure that they don't get the knucklehead stuff, stays off of their desk so that they can do their jobs, and you run interference for them. It's like with an offensive line in football. You make sure that they can execute and do their jobs properly. And sometimes it means dealing with operations or dealing with upper management or dealing with vendors or stuff like that. So there's a lot of that goes on so that your people can do what they need to do. And it depends, a lot of it's who you're having to deal with depends if you're embedded in an R&D facility or if you're embedded in a production facility. The players change that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, but the product's still the same, whatever your lab is producing. So it's kind of exciting.
Oh, that's a really great build. So next question, I'm going to start with Eric, but I'm hoping the other three will tag in. How do you know which path is for you? Are there roles or projects or opportunities you should seek out that help answer that question? And at what stage of your career, for example, as a technician or a scientist, or do you wait to senior scientist, should you pursue those experiences?
Well, I think you used the absolutely right term earlier when you said self-reflection. I have a mentorship role in a number of ways, and I tell just about everybody that I advise, one of the things that you've got to do, or you've got to realize that you do in a technical career, is that you can never stop learning. Sometimes people think that once they're out of school, they're done, they never have to learn another thing again, and of course that's a really good way to get a dead-end career. But the fact of the matter is, you continue to learn, and one of the things you need to learn about is what you're doing in your job and how things are going well for you and how they're not. And if you really love what you're doing in the lab, if you really love product development, those kinds of things, that's giving you a pretty good sign that this is what you want to do, possibly for the rest of your life. But on the other hand, if you're in situations where you start thinking to yourself, this isn't that much fun, and I really think I can do a better job in terms of, working with others so that they're the ones at the bench working on these projects and so forth, then that's a good cue as well. But regarding the opportunities, there are many. At work, you seek to take on projects, no matter how small they are or how big they are. If they're big, well, if you're starting out, seek to be a part of them. Because as you start working with projects and managing them, you're going to be indirectly managing other people. And how you work within that framework and how well you do is going to tell you if you really want to move into management or not. And the other side of it is, and this is not a paid advertisement for everybody that's watching, I was not cued on this. I'll say the AOCS is a great opportunity because you can volunteer and you can start taking on more management roles. It wasn't mentioned, but I am the chair of the program committee for the annual meeting. And let me tell you, there's a lot of management involved in that. It's just enough for me. I'm happy to then go back to just having the few indirect reports that I have. But the point is that you start to learn, this is something I do well. This is something that is gratifying to me, and you can start to move that direction. And at what stage of your career do you make those choices, and do you pursue those experiences? Well, I really think at any point is good, but the real point is you've got to prove yourself. You've got to prove that you know what you're doing and that you are capable. And long ago, I was in a lab for a small family-owned business, and I was given some opportunities to take over the quality control program, which I turned down because that's not what I'm into. But the point is, the reason why that was asked of me was because of what I had done up to that point in preparing us to deal with that type of a program. It was new to us. And in making the proposals that I did and saying, these are the approaches we should take. And as a result of being forward thinking and putting those out to the bosses and to upper management, that's the reason why those opportunities came up. So bottom line, keep learning and keep pushing. Keep showing what you can do. Don't just do what your job says you should do.
That was very good, actually. I think early in your career, it's very important to say yes. If you know what a job is and you don't like it, Eric had the example, then you can say no. But if you've never done it before, you really don't know if you're going to enjoy it or not. And the only way to find out is to go try it.
That's very true, because when I transitioned from Dow into Lonza, I was going from a total R&D environment to a manufacturing environment. So I said, I'm still in the lab, but I'm in a manufacturing facility. Why not try it and see what happens? And it trained me and got me prepared for the next position, which was managing an R&D group as well as a development group. And that really, saying yes and taking a chance and finding out, because the problem coming out of school is you're in an R&D focused environment, very academic environment. And if you haven't had an internship or something where you've had a chance to be out in industry, your experiences are somewhat limited. It doesn't hurt to take a stint in manufacturing just to see if anything, if it's not what you like, you can take that experience back, so that as you're developing at the bench or working in an R&D lab, you at least know what they want and you're better for it as you move up in your career.
Yeah, absolutely, because you truly never know which opportunity is going to lead where. It's very difficult to know everything that's available out there, especially when you're first starting out. And then to know what it's going to lead to after that is even harder. And I've had a number of things in my life I never wish to do again. But I have yet to have done anything that I'm, looking back, I'm glad I did that, because it has helped me do other things that I don't
Brent,
think I could have without that experience.
I think that's a great transition to our next question. Is there a pivotal moment or moments that helped you determine which way to grow your career, either yes or no?
I don't know if there was a moment that said, boy, I really want to go this way or I really want to go that way. There have been many moments when I said, I really am going to do something else because I'm not very happy with what I'm doing right now. And at that point, I'd start exploring and look for the next thing to say yes to.
Sometimes,
how about the rest of you?
Sometimes it just happens that the opportunity is just all of a sudden you turn around and wham, it's on your desk in the form of, okay, the guy who used to run the laboratory has gone on and taken another position. They need you to run the lab. They need you to run R&D. So all of a sudden you're walking into this role, and sometimes it's going to be a situation where you're learning on the job, and it's very daunting, it's very challenging, but sometimes you just wake up and all of a sudden it hits you right in the face.
Yeah. A lot of people, they ask me, because I deal with a lot of new engineers coming out of school, and the first thing I tell them when they start for me is, you need to decide what you want to do 5 years from now. and tenuous. And if you have any kind of goal at all, you're liable to end up either there or at least somewhere else other than where you are. The people I see getting stuck have absolutely no idea what they're going to do next, or have even an idea that there's something next. They just wait for it to happen. So it is about preparing yourself and asking yourself every day, am I happy doing this? If you're not happy doing it, I guarantee you, whoever you work for is not going to be very happy with your performance. And eventually,
Sure.
there's going to be a separation there. It's, need to be voluntary or involuntary. So far, I've chosen voluntary. It's worked out a lot better.
Yeah, Brent, you just what you just said right there. That's absolutely right. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, if it's a real pain to you, then chances are good the higher ups, your boss absolutely knows that. And in fact, the pivotal point for me, and there really was a single pivotal point in my life, which was when we were moving offices from one building to another, and I was packing up my office, and I came across a graduated cylinder, which I hadn't used in, 3 or 4 years. And I looked at it, and I realized how much I missed the lab. And at that point in my life, I was gone maybe 60 to 70% of my time. I was on the road. The reps loved me because I loved getting in the field and working with them and playing with what they were doing and all that. But yeah, I got to tell you, I don't think that my boss was the owner of the company. I don't think RJ was particularly thrilled with my performance at that point, because I'd come back and it drove me nuts to write my report, and it drove me nuts to deal with the issues that came with a marketing responsibility. And so there really was a pivotal point. And you're right. When I got into that job, I liked it, but it wasn't something I was thrilled with. And if I had looked forward to 4 or 5 years down the road, I probably would have realized, no, it wasn't what I really wanted to do.
Yep. Well, that's another very good point.
Thanks, everybody. Go ahead. Sorry.
So another perspective to think about it is once you prove yourself, right? So you're a subject matter expert, and from there, do you want to make a bigger impact, coaching other people's? And because by yourself, your impact to the company is limited. But if you can develop more people like you, become a subject expert, and you're going to bring more impact to the company. So that's from a company perspective, and also your personal perspective. You can think about your aspirational career goals. Do you want to bring more impact and building a team? If you interested in that, it's definitely that's where the pivotal point is thinking about moving to the management roles. To do that, and if you decide you want to do that, you start building your other core competencies for the managers, because when we go to school, if we go to the technical majors, we typically train as a scientist, right? We are not particularly trained in other area for the management. So that's where you start take some volunteer or online classes, start building your other core competencies. So prepare yourself to take other ladders.
Sure. And thank you, everybody, for your humility and honesty about sharing how you realized maybe it wasn't the right fit when you weren't really performing at your best. So it's not easy to admit, but I think it's a good realization. So my next question is for Rebecca. What about a career in production versus corporate R&D? You talked about this a little bit, but I'd love to hear more. Does a production job require a university degree? Could you switch from corporate R&D to production or vice versa? Love to hear more.
Okay. Well, production R&D is more the applied. In other words, getting the projects out of the lab into production and the scale up and the implementation. And it's different thought processes, because you always have your eyes on where this is going in the plant, what the potential drawbacks are, and I've seen people go from production back into to pure R&D. The only reason I made that as a point is that if you're looking, it's one of the things I found out from Dow is if you're seeing in the R&D, that's one of the first places they're going to. They tend to do a reduction in force. That's if you look at a lot of the companies, that's the first place they will start to make reductions in terms of where they can cut. Production, the R&D versus production, you have line versus staff. So that's certainly something to think of long term in terms of, if you're trying to plan a career in corporate R&D, that you need to make sure you're aligned with whatever the company's doing, so that way you're valuable to the company, so that you're not threatened in terms of a reduction in force. Being with production, again, it's you're involved in the day-to-day operations as far as putting out the pounds or scaling up new projects. There, you're part of the line, the actual production stuff, and it's something I saw moving from Lonza, is that it's being aligned with the production unit. You're less vulnerable, and you're needed more, it seems like, in that respect. And it's just watching colleagues and stuff who've gone and aligned themselves into the pure R&Ds, and watched some of them leave laboratories and go into production, because there's some stability there. Like I said, R&D typically it seems like it's always the first place they start to cut. And in this world, one of the things, when I started Dow, a lot of people said when you hired on at an institution like Dow or some of the other majors, you hired on there and you retired from there. Now, these days, you're going to be changing jobs maybe as much as 6 times in your career. So you've got to be not only preparing yourself for moving up, but also making sure you're marketable in case your company gets bought, gets closed, gets downsized, the mergers and acquisitions. It's all up. You have to have that. You have to make sure you are a marketable person when you go out and start to look into the job market. So it's something I learned coming out of Dow, and I've stayed more in the production environment, and now I'm more strategic than tactical, and that's been a big adjustment for me going into strategic planning. But I still get to see the tactical side of it. But it's something to consider, and like I said, there's a good possibility, no matter what track you're on, you may not be on that track with the same company, based on the way the chemical industry is changing. So it's just keep that in mind as you're working, that you're blessed if you can retire from the place you started with. But if you watch your company being bought out, closed down, merged, acquired, there will always be changes. So you want to make sure that you can market yourself into the next position with the new company or into another company or things like that. So that's kind of something to think about. You're your own best product and product manager, so you've got to keep that in mind.
I agree with everything you said, Becky, except in looking back on it, I think it was always good to be marketable, even within the same company, even if you weren't.
True that. Very true.
I look at people who, have the meteoric careers where they're really, it's what did they do different from me at different points in time? It's like they always remembered that they had to be ready to do something else. And there were times in my career I said, oh man, this is great. I'm going to be relaxed and this is going to be wonderful forever. And it turns out forever is not very long.
That's true.
Yeah, and as you said, even within the same company, and I am now on my 3rd company, even though my position hasn't changed too much. Toma was bought by Air Products, and then our division at Air Products was bought by Evonik. And each time I was coming in as a stranger and I had to demonstrate, no, really, I do know what I'm doing, and there's a reason why I'm in the position that I'm in. And it even took an even bigger twist with Evonik, because I essentially had to apply for my old job. I say that it wasn't exactly that. I had to prove why I was there. I submitted a resume and everything. So, yeah, you got to stay on top of it. You got to be able to market yourself at a moment's notice.
From the R&D management standpoint, right? So corporate R&D has an advantage on the resource and also information, because in the corporate you have a wide view on the issues, but the disadvantage is you are remote from the production. So if you stay there too long, you basically the lack of understanding on the matters related to the commercialization and the production. And the production experience really can bring in the common sense, which can help to define the best alternative solutions for the company. So ideally, in my previous job, I'm looking for the people, they have the experience with the R&D and also production experience, because the two experience really make the scientists more effective and efficient to identify the issues and develop the solution, and also able to scale that up quickly. So that's really how I see the experience. I think both is valuable. If you can have the opportunity to work in the both area, I think that's where you can develop your own edge.
Sure. Last question before we switch to the audience questions. Consulting, kind of an entirely different area. So Brent, I'm going to start with you. Why did you go into consulting? What do you think the pros and cons are? And how do you know if you're qualified or knowledgeable enough to be a consultant?
Well, the best way to find out is to do it, and then the market tells you rather quickly whether they're interested in doing that. For me, I was tired of having people above me basically telling me what I was going to do every day. I had this vision I could come out and I could work, charge more, work a few less days every year. It was just going to be this wonderful, wonderful life. And in fact, came out, I charged more. And in my case, I picked a good time to come out in my industry, and a lot of people need help. And now I'm working more days than I was before. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's got its moments, right, when it's good and bad. And the problem, I think, when you're truly an independent consultant is if you're not working, there is no money coming in. So for me, that has turned out to be, a bit of a problem. I never worked my salary before. I was in a job, I had work to do, I did it, and now I got to go find the work to do. So, but don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining. It's been the last job I had, I was kind of stuck in one position. I wasn't doing any traveling at all, and the company is very regional, so if I did travel, it was in about a 2-hour circle. In the last 3 years, I've been lots of different places I haven't been lately, so it's been a good time.
Sure. Sounds like some definite inherent pros and cons. Linton, you also own a consulting company. Would you care to comment?
Well, I'm too fresh to comment on that.
All right. Well, then we'll open it up to the audience questions. First question, how do you move from a technical path to management path? Do companies require one to have a degree in management besides an advanced degree in science?
Well, I'll jump. I'll say, yeah, not necessarily, but I'll tell you what, if you go to school, if you announce that you're going to go to school and get an MBA, you are saying and putting your marker down, I'm moving into management now, and it actually opens doors. But if you decide that you want to step up into your boss's role or something like that, no, it's not absolutely necessary. In fact, generally when you're managing other technologists, I can't think of any bosses I've had that had an MBA or anything like that. Yeah, generally it was on the job training, so to speak.
I agree. A degree is not required for any position of any kind, I don't think, but it's the door opener. So if you don't have a degree or experience that points you in that direction, then you've got to go get it within the company. And it may not be an assigned position, but they'll have a project and need a small project, and you have to jump on that and make sure it comes out well, whatever that takes. It's probably not going to be a 40-hour-a-week transition if you don't have the right experience. I see a lot of people that think, geez, I'm going to show up Monday through Friday, work my 8 hours, I'm going to get out of here, and everything's going to turn up roses. And I'm sure there are places like that. I just have never seen one.
Well, that's true, because as a manager, now that I've moved into strategic planning, I don't answer the phone near as much at night and on weekends as I did when I was a manager. Especially if you're managing to production units and development. There's basically, our labs weren't 24/7, but still, if something's going on and they needed something, usually had to pick up the phone. That's part and parcel of management. And a lot of times it's just knowledge of how things work will put you into the position. If you know how to get things done, they'll make you the manager. Because if you can facilitate and get people to do things, and that's sometimes more valuable than having the degree on the wall. And that's where, when I moved into the management positions, because I knew how to get things done, and to get people to do things, to make things happen. So it's something. Getting things done is probably the best thing. If you can get the job done or demonstrate that, then that may get the eye of upper management.
And it can be the little thing. You just don't know. They just catch people's eye, right? So.
Mm-hmm.
The other area is you think about it, is for the management, really is two function, right? So this is the experience, is learning on the job. One is decision-making capabilities. Second one is planning. So this is all you can learn on the job. If you have a good decision-making skills, and you can plan your work correctly, and also can articulate it to the management. And I think those are the key skills typically the management are looking for. Beyond you have the good people skills. I think those they learn on the job, and also you can take some course just to train yourself. For example, the planning part, right? That's came from the project management skills, and the decision making skills. That's also from your technical skill in combination with the project management skills.
I like the fact that you keep saying skill, because a lot of this stuff can be learned. There are certainly people out there with natural leadership and management talents, but there are more people out there that didn't necessarily know how to do things until they started doing them, but did learn how to develop those skills, not just talents. So if you don't like working with people, doesn't mean you can't learn how to.
All right, we have one other question from the audience, which I think will be our last question, and it's, which path, technical or management, is more demanding? And by demanding, the question is, what is the level of management between both the technical and management path? I think which ones may be subject to more oversight or maybe micromanaging, and then also the variety of things that you'll do for both roles. Which role comes with more responsibility? Oh, and there was one other question if we have time.
As I took different positions, mainly moving up the management side, the quote I got that I always liked is I got 20% more money and 100% more headache. I think that's actually true. So, but again, it was the things that appealed to me. So when I'm doing technical things, that's relief is not the right word, but it's almost like a vacation from some of the things I do in the management side. So for me, I felt the management side of it was much more demanding. The technical side required me to think harder and to pay closer attention to smaller details, but it didn't stress me out like some of the other things I've dealt with.
I'm going to agree with you, Brent. I think that you're probably absolutely right, because I'm thinking about in my own job, what I'm responsible for is my set of projects. I'm responsible for one support chemist who makes my life very easy because she and I are exactly on the same page. In fact, I wouldn't even call working with her managing her. But let me tell you, I am certain I am a headache to my boss. And I suspect the rest of us in our group are too. And, I think you're probably right. It's I think that I have a good time and I like doing what I do, and I'm probably taking a slightly easier way out.
I see this the technical part is more vertically develop yourself, right? So you get a more immersed or in-depth knowledge in the subject matters. And once you become a manager, the demand on you is more horizon wide, which means they demand more skills. They have more expectations from you. So to me, it sounds like maybe it's a different demand on the individual.
And that was well said. That really, in the technical path, you tend to have more control over just yourself, and that's pretty easy. When you have to control 500 people out there, and they're going all kinds of different directions.
All right, last question. If the technical side is seen as supplementary, does that mean it is less significant than a management path in the company?
In my experience, the technical side, because traditional R&D, right? You have a research and a development. My experience is in the food and oil industry. We gradually shift into more product development. We kind of reduce the research part. So that really means the research part is not that important in the organization. They put more emphasis on the product development side. So that means that if you are working for a food and oil company, that means dominated by the management ladders. And if you work for the tech company, maybe that's a different story. I heard a different story. They are everything controlled. For example, Silicon Valley, all the startup, the manager controlled by the engineers. But in the food and oil industry, that's my observation. It's dominated by the management ladders, and the research fellows. They only set those positions as they need it. For example, some manager, senior director need to be prepared for retirement. They create a position for the research fellow, so that person can transition into a retirement, so they can build a succession plan to develop other directors. So that's how my experience.
For me, in production operations and plant building, I can go out and I can find 50 engineers tomorrow that can help me design and build a plant. I might be able to find one or two that can help run it. So it's it's just the ability to work with people that can work with them well is difficult and is challenging. So it's not that the technical side is less important. It's just that when you start dealing with engineers, a lot of engineers aren't very good with people. So consequently, they become pretty valuable in operations.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
actually, can I toss one thought in?
yes, please do.
Okay, and that is, I think that we are on the R&D side are being trying to think the right word to use. It's being seen as less important oftentimes. It's an easy place to take money from, but it's an easy place to cut costs with. But the problem is that everybody sells a product, and someone's got to develop that product. And in order to make sure that the product can be sold, it's got to be differentiated in some kind. There's a reason why you want my product versus their product. And as you start removing resources from the technical side, and generally it comes out of research first. And after the research has been either eliminated or brought completely down, and I've unfortunately seen that happen, then it starts coming out of applications, which is my area. And if we can't give you a product to sell, then we're not going to sell anything. And unfortunately, that's something that seems to be lost a lot of times when we forecast for the next year as opposed to forecasting for 10 years from now.
Exactly. It's future versus now.
Yep.
And that's the concern in the technology track that I didn't even think about until just this moment when we started talking.
Well, it's a thing that normally R&D should be a certain portion of the total revenues, and it gets thinner and thinner over time. But you make a very valid point. You've got to have because if you have 10 projects in the R&D pipeline, so many of them won't make it all the way out into production. They'll die because of they didn't make scale up, the marketplace didn't materialize, or something like that. So you constantly got to be feeding that pipeline so that you have the next great project, so that your company's continuing to make money. And that's something that, like you said, it gets left out when the bean counters start to look at the budgets and stuff like that. You have to feed that pipeline. But so it makes working on the technical side, you have to recognize that there's danger there. But then there's also, if you're working from the production side, they decide to a product's mature, and they get phased out. The market's no longer there. Something is coming on that's going to take that market away. Unless you have the next big product, then that product's going to mature and die off. The unit gets retasked, and then all of a sudden they're shutting down units. Lonza did that with the plant that I happened to work at. They decided to take the production, shut that plant down, and take production back overseas. So it can happen in both places. But so that's the thing is, as you're working out there, kind of keep an eye on just how the marketplace is doing.
That's all really great insight. Thank you, guys. This brings us to the end of the hour. I see a couple of posts in the chat that say thank you to our speakers. Want to thank all of the participants for calling in. Put in another plug. If you have ideas, things you'd like to see in future webinars, or if you'd like to organize one, certainly reach out. Want to thank the AOCS staff for helping us bring this to life. And above all, I wanted to thank Rebecca, Eric, Linton, and Brent for all of your time that you put. There were some planning calls that happened before this, so the webinar isn't just the hour. All of our speakers really put a lot of time and energy into making this happen. So thank you to the four of you.
Thanks for having us.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm walking away with a lot more knowledge, and I've already gone through this transition. So hopefully it was equally useful to all of our participants. And happy hump day to everyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Everybody have a good afternoon.